We have breaking news from Washington. The Senate has just passed a $1.5 trillion government funding package. That package contains nearly $14 billion dedicated to humanitarian and military aid for Ukraine, which is almost triple Ukraine's annual defense budget of $5 billion. The Senate vote was 68 in favor and 31 opposed to that package. Yesterday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the United States definitely has declared economic war against Russia and is waging this war. White House Deputy National Security Advisor said, I wouldn't call it an economic war. This is our way of demonstrating resolve. That resolve includes some specific targets, the Russian billionaires who have been specifically named in the sanctions lists issued by the United States and other countries. The British Foreign Secretary says that 7 Russian billionaires, quote, will have their assets in the UK frozen. They are banned from traveling here, and no UK citizen or company may do business with them. The most visible effect of the sanctions are the pictures of Russian-owned super yachts tied up to docks that they were trying to escape from before European governments locked them in place. Former CIA officer Alex Finley is maintaining a yacht watch on Twitter. For example, earlier this morning, she issued this heads up about Roman Abramovich's yacht. By the way, Solaris is currently rounding Sicily. If she's within 12 miles of shore, the Italians could still act. Joining us now, Alex Finley. She's a former CIA officer of the Directorate of Operations, where she served in West Africa and Europe. She has been tracking and researching Russian billionaires and their yachts in Barcelona for a forthcoming book, and a third in a satirical series about a CIA operative. And Brian Klaas, Associate Professor in Global Politics at University College London. He is the author of the book Corruptible: Who Gets Power and How It Changes Us. Alex, let's begin with the Yacht Watch, which is the most visible. You're in Barcelona, which is the world headquarters for many of these yachts that go there to get repaired. How many do they have so far? And they are, at this point, they're frozen in place. The governments haven't completely seized them and taken ownership of them yet.
Right. So at this point, we still only have 4 yachts in Europe that have been frozen, as you said. It's not like the government has been able to seize them and take control of them. So we have Dilbar in Hamburg, which belongs to Alisher Usmanov. The Germans took that one over a week ago, I believe now, but there's still some questions about the state of it. Is it frozen? Is it free to go or not? For right now, it looks like it's not going anywhere, and the crew has been dismissed. The French authorities in La Ciotat, they took another one, Amore Vero, and the Italians seized 2 others, Lina and Lady M. But again, the actual state of these yachts is unclear. A number of people lawyers are getting involved and saying, well, we can't guarantee, or we're telling you that these are not the owners that you think that they are, therefore the yachts should be allowed to leave.
Well, that's going to take an awful lot of legal process to make those cases. And Brian Klaas, this is the kind of thing that could be tied up in courts around the world for years. Meanwhile, those yachts are wasting away at those docks because they need more maintenance than an infant baby. What are the things we're seeing in what Russia is calling an economic war that are the most important elements from your perspective?
So the main goal here has to be to make the lives of Russian oligarchs more Russian, to put pressure on Putin. They all have exit options. So they sail their yachts around the Mediterranean. They send their kids to elite schools in Britain, the United States, et cetera. They have their dirty cash slosh around offshore banks, and they buy up property in places like London with shell companies. And so what we need to do is to make sure that their lives are significantly more entwined with the Russian economy. We need to make them care about traffic in St. Petersburg and Moscow. We need to make them care about life in Russia. And the more that we do that, the more that we constrict their world to Russia, the more that they're going to press Putin to end this war. And so I think the key to ending Putin's regime is to make sure that the oligarchs understand that the only way they can get back to any sort of normalcy which I hope never happens, by the way, because we need to crack down on this money laundering for good, is to end the Putin regime and to end the war. But that's the major pressure point, is to make it so these oligarchs have a significantly more Russian life and a significantly less international one, where they're free to roam around the world with ill-gotten gains.
And Alex, this is putting pressure on these oligarchs, these billionaires, in a way that they've never experienced it before. They don't have any Russian indicators on their yachts. That's not the place where they want anyone to know that there's anything Russian about those boats.
Correct. Most of these boats, yeah, as you said, they're not flagged in Russia. Most of them are flagged in the Marshall Islands or the Cayman Islands. And again, the ownership structures are opaque. So it's an offshore company usually that's listed as the management company. And that then has to be untangled from several other shell companies going back before you actually can find the beneficial owner. These guys have gone out of their way to make sure that you cannot figure out that they are the actual owners.
Brian, what's your interpretation of Vladimir Putin's threat tonight to nationalize the assets of foreign companies that have suspended operations in Russia?
My interpretation is that this is going to escalate, and that we can either decide to have a sort of slow-moving dissociation from Russia or to rip the Band-Aid off. I mean, I think what's become clear is that this is a rogue state that doesn't respect any sort of international norms. And the more that we decide to sort of go in this tit for tat, rather than actually cracking down on money laundering, cracking down on the oligarchs in a serious and lasting way, and ultimately isolating the Russian economy, not just for a slap on the wrist for a short period, but actually changing how geopolitics and international economics works for years. That's the goal here. And I think Vladimir Putin holds some leverage over us because of oil and gas and things like that. And we have to decide, do we want to be in a situation where that's still true in 5 years' time? So, yes, there could be some economic damage that Putin can inflict back on us. But I think we have to make a decision as a society whether we want to stand with democracies or autocracies, and whether we want to have a murderous tyrant and war criminal have leverage over our economies going forward. So, the threat is real, and there may be some economic blowback, but I think that's a price that we should all be willing to pay to ultimately save ourselves in the long run a serious level of headaches, economic costs, and more war in the future.